My story, one man's journey. The world that many of us grew up in was a world of hurt, pain, torment, and hopelessness. My story is one of those stories. There was a point in my life when I thought I'd die on the streets, a drunk and drug addict. My story is not unique. Many of the First Nations and Native American people have been lost due to intergenerational trauma and addiction. It is possible to change, no matter how hopeless you may think it is. I tell this story because there is hope. In telling our stories, there is healing. My story has a lot to do with the story of others as well. The trauma, the pain that we went through, the growing up in alcoholic and violence, the jails, the sobering up, working through the pain, working through the trauma, working through the spiritual part, the cultural part, bringing that back to being where I'm at today. I want to tell that story to others so that it may help others in their healing process. I was born in Cranbrook, British Columbia, 1942. And I was born in an alcoholic home. Mother and father were both alcoholic. Grandmother was alcoholic, grandfather was alcoholic. There was a lot of alcoholism on the reservation in Cranbrook. My dad's Cree native, and my mother's Kootenai, or in the native way, Tanaka. And they drank a lot. My mother and father separated when I was 10 years old. And my mother brought me into Vancouver, British Columbia, a coastal city. And there, because of her drinking, her addiction, I ended up in the foster home. And I stayed in that foster home until I was 15, then I ran away. Once I ran away, I went back to my father in Calgary. And of course, he was still drinking pretty hard. So I joined him. Started my drinking career at the age 15. And during that drinking career, I think it's pretty well like a lot of other people's. I ended up on Skid Row. I ended up in the joint, prison. There was a saying that people like myself are going to do life on the installment plan, and that's pretty well what it looked like. The streets as well as the jails, and it was a very, very violent lifestyle at the same time. So that was my addiction life, and I continued this lifestyle until I was 32. And at age 32, I sobered up. When I sobered up in a non-native treatment center. And then I started to work after a year of schooling, I went to school for a year to get a certificate so that I could be an alcohol and drug counselor. And during that time, I was learning a lot about me, about who Patrick Paul is. AA was a big part of my life that time, and sobriety and AA and going to school. I was learning about addiction. I didn't know too much about who I was as a Native person until I started to work for the Seattle Indian Alcoholism Program as a counselor. And then it was during that time that they were doing there was the gatherings of Native people. It was during that movement where Native people were uniting. And there were spiritual leaders, medicine people that were coming to different places to talk to us, talking to us about circles, talking to us about eagle feathers, sage, the sage ceremonies, talking to us about forming circles and sweat lodges and bringing us into the lodges. And that was my beginning of traditional and spiritual ways, because I didn't know any of that when I was growing up. I heard that we had a sweat lodge somewhere next door. A neighbor had a sweat lodge. I didn't know what it was. I never questioned it. So once I grasped on to my native traditional cultural ways, it really opened up the door to my sobriety. I was doing good for those couple of years, AA and such, but I always thought there's a missing element here. There's something missing in my life. And then when these spiritual people came in and started to share these elements, the eagle feather, the sage ceremonies, and going over to the sweat lodges, and I started that, then I found my circle was complete then. This is what it's all about. Then I began to use those same elements in my work. And I began to start talking about culture and spirituality and the reasons why we need these in our life. The circles, why we need the circles. What the eagle feathers about, what the eagle is about, what the four-legged are about, what the winged are about, what Mother Earth is about, what plant life is about. I spoke to a counselor. I said, I need to get into a center. He got me into the center. You know, one of the good things that I like about the field is that the counselors, the majority of the counselors are very caring, loving, compassionate people, and they're there for you. And that's what helped me, is that people were there to help me. I knew and I could feel the compassion. And that's what counts in this when they're working, trying to help people, is that compassion. Yes, that was another part of the story when I sobered up. The same counselor said, "There's some classes going on for counselors. Would you like to take these courses?" And I thought, I'll do it, but I don't think I can go to school, because school was not a part of my life. I hated school. So what happened was I did go, got enrolled, and took my first course in addictions, and a year later I got a job with the Seattle Indian Alcoholism Program in Seattle as a counselor. Got my first year certificate that enabled me to get into the field, and then got more training while I was in the field. and then decided to go for my BA, my bachelor's degree. And so I did. I got my bachelor's degree in Native American Studies. And then, a couple of years later, I decided I'll go for a master's degree, and I got my master's degree in counseling psychology. And I remember a friend of mine, and a lot of people know this friend of mine, his name is Harold Belmont, and I was so happy when I got my degree, and I said, "Look at Harold, I got my master's degree." And Harold turned around and he said, "That's not your degree." I said, "What? What do you mean that's not my degree?" He said, "That